Hi, everybody. It's Ron again, and it's time for another look at today's headlines. So, today we have the same sort of things at the top dominating a lot of the news, knocking the Ukraine conflict completely off of all the news, all the things about Israel and Gaza and this sort of now a kind of a delayed invasion situation there. But here we have another sort of American situation, a classic American situation. Unfortunately, the mass shooting in Maine, 22 dead. And this is a weird situation that has really grown up in America in the last couple of decades where there's so many of these incidents. But I know in the past, I know in the 50s, all the high schools in America had shooting clubs and kids carried their guns to school. They didn't have all these mass shooting events. And, when I was even in high school, all the kids from the farm areas drove their pickup trucks to school and they had the gun racks with their guns displayed right in the back window. And, no one ever worried about people having guns in school, or I think it's a kind of a situation of monkey see, monkey do. This becomes a something that people read about and see, and you have a time of increasing frustration in society, which all societies go through. But in America, we have such easy and incredible access to guns, and I know foreigners sort of see guns as dangerous, but I think most Americans just don't see it as a danger. It's hard to understand that if you're not within the U.S. culture and see how ubiquitous guns are. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the solution is. I mean, obviously, the solution is what they do in a lot of other countries: take all the guns away. But there are so many people who are not of that mind, it would be very difficult in the U.S. So anyway, let's move along from that seemingly intractable and tragic situation. Trump takes a stand. I'm kind of tired of hearing about him. He's still gobbling up the headlines. Even for the people who hate him, he means big ratings and advertising dollars. And I'm sure a lot of even very left-leaning media organizations would be pleased to have him as president again, if just for profit's sake. Scientists developing new vaccine for cocaine addiction. I've heard about these sort of things all my life, where you have kind of unusual things where you like dental caries, like cavities. Maybe you could be vaccinated against a bacteria that does that. These are interesting concepts, and apparently this is a project. It won a prize, EuroHealth Innovation Awards. It would be interesting to knock out some of these human afflictions that just bedevil people, once you get on those drugs. But it's very fanciful, and it takes many years for those sorts of things to come to fruition. Senior Chinese leaders greet Newsom with warm words. This is part of the situation in China, the South China Seas, the situation with Taiwan, where China is seemingly becoming a little more belligerent in the area, or a little more aggressive, pushing back against what was, really. Most of the oceans, most of the seas in the world are American oceans and seas, and we're right up there against them. And China's pushing up back against that, and they're doing it against the backdrop of perhaps some economic and demographic difficulty in their country. So this is an interesting trend that's developing, which is concerning. Something about guns, not that interesting. So here's finally they got the House Speaker elected in the U.S. Apparently a Trump ally. I don't know, kind of a something you get tired of hearing of. Maybe it's something that should be important. But I don't know, not that interesting. Here we have another hurricane. I always, within the U.S. media, there is a lot of interest in and reporting on natural disasters. Doesn't seem quite that interesting, and these things just continually happen, and it is a lot of human interest stories there. But I don't think on balance, it's very interesting. It's just about any time of the year, a few times a year, you can look and see the headlines about the hurricanes, like it's some incredibly new thing. Dad pulls kids out of school because the teacher's too fat. This sounds like something like somebody posted on Twitter, and it somehow boiled up into a clickbaity stories. I pulled my kids from school because their teacher's fat. She was a bad influence, and I don't want her low energy near them. I don't know, just as long as they don't end up homeschooling them, because the point of school is not to teach kids algebra and geometry. That's something you'll never use again. It's just to teach you how to think, how to be disciplined, how to be socialized around other people. You'll forget all the stuff you learn right after you leave school. Take it from me. And I wasn't very good at it during school either. So, in Texas, travel bans for abortions. Come on. As a sort of I just by virtue of the person I am and where I grew up in the world in a sort of rural area, I tend to be a little more conservative. And in that aspect, I think that if I have enough money and resources, I should be able to abort as many kids as I want. This is, it's a personal freedom. It's being able to use all the technology and your money to maybe improve your life or improve your future life and the way it goes. It's having control of your life. Now, of course, I know as a man I can't force a woman to, but I might be able to influence her a little. And in this day and age where it seems that men, their rights, the idea of manhood is often denigrated, having abortions is one thing that works in our favor, so we don't have to pay for an unexpected child for the rest of our lives. So I would think if you're a little bit conservative, you might approve of abortion more. Now, of course, we still have to be cognizant. I don't think we can just slam people who oppose abortion like they hate women. That's a terrible argument, and that's just kind of preaching to the choir. That's if you're of a certain mindset, and then you say, "Oh, people who disagree with us, they just hate women." It's a kind of a rabble-rousing thing you say to yourself, and we have to recognize that abortion, maybe it really shouldn't be, because you are killing a kid, even though they're not born yet. They probably would be born. It's not just some undifferentiated thing that could become something else, or we don't know what the pregnancy will turn out to be. So I think there's an argument to be made for both sides. I don't like travel bans. I think one of the good things in the United States is we have conservative states and we have liberal states. So if you want a lot of public services and really nice parks and things and lots of outreach to help the lower classes or the disenfranchised, you can move to a liberal state and pay higher taxes and have nice facilities. If you don't want that, you can move to a conservative state with low taxes and drive around on unpaved roads all the time. So I like differences in that. And I like the idea in the United States, if there's no national law that approves of or gives the right to abortion, each state can do their own thing, but still you would have the ability to travel to another state, maybe a liberal state where they take a different idea. So it doesn't seem quite fair. Texas, maybe they restrict it, but you still should be able to go to another place to exercise that right. Since, when they took away Roe v. Wade, they weren't saying that abortions were illegal. They were just saying each state can do what they want. And that's that's not too far off of from what I think might be reasonable in this, but this is not reasonable to ban people and try to just completely criminalize it to make your own state like its own country. I think, especially with these moral issues, we have to let them play out in the court of public opinion and with what people feel, with especially what the young people feel, because you don't want to leave it to old people and old politicians. So I don't know. I don't agree with banning people from going to another state. But that was a long detour. I always try not to get caught up in button, panic button moment controversies, but especially though I think those big controversial tasks are often you just see the screaming headlines, and I think we have to always think about what's really behind it and what both sides have to say. Sexual assault, I don't know. This is fascinating. Mysterious pyramid. It's not mysterious at all. It's just clickbait. But this is and it's not really even heartbreaking. It's just a memorial to somebody who died. So we have what it was a pyramid on Balmoral Estate known as Prince Albert's Cairn. I believe that's correct pronunciation. It's not mysterious. It was built in 1862 by Queen Victoria to memorialize Prince Albert, her husband. This is super cool. I've always wanted to have a little patch of forest, and it'd be fun to build a pyramid there and have people come by and say, "Hey, what the heck is this?" That is fantastic. Year after Musk's Twitter takeover, X remains in turmoil. I always wonder about people who buy these very well-known brand names and then destroy them by rebranding them or merging them into something else. I think Yahoo did that. They bought a bunch of brands and they just destroyed them. Who knows? It is one of the freest platforms out there today, but he's also somebody maybe like Trump who has a lot of unforced errors, but he is super cool. I mean, he's somebody who got rich and, I guess from, was it PayPal and eBay, and then he took that money and put it into stuff any cool nerd would think is a good thing to do, the rockets and the electric cars. It's sort of stuff you dream about doing if you have a lot of money. Listening to favorite music relieves pain. Okay, not too big a stretch. Experts reconstruct face of Peru's most famous mummy. There we go. There's the face. I don't know, maybe I were expecting it to look like an alien or something. I'm afraid to click on this. We got Phallus and the Boar. Turkey digs yield clues to human history. Okay, interesting. I scrolled past that. Whoops. Yeah, this is Turkey's a fantastic, interesting place. The very super old temple or worship site that was discovered there that just predates the rest of civilization by thousands of years. And it's most of the time when you hear people talking about stuff like that, it's sort of conspiratorial theory or alternate history people, but the dates, I think it's 9,500 years for that. The one, it's a Göbekli Tepe, is that it? I forget what it is, but it's just way, way older than even all of that stuff in the Tigris and Euphrates area. Just who knows what was going on with human civilization so far back, just millennia before the history we thought these sort of things began. Democrat Bowman criminally charged for pulling fire alarm on Capitol Hill. A lot of bounds that have been transcended in the past, really since I think Obama was president when That guy yelled liar as he was giving a speech, and since then it's become more and more incivil and polarized. I wonder where the turning point will be, if there's some person who can eventually bring unity, or some catastrophe or war that will bring things together. Clarence Thomas's huge RV loan was forgiven by wealthy businessmen. That's Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court justice who seems to have so many scandals being uncovered. Certainly since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the abortion, the right to abortion that from in the Supreme Court, certainly the media has been out to pick apart all of the Supreme Court justices and show how compromised they allegedly are. I try to give a fresh take on all of these headlines and not really look at them a lot and study them, but I did wear my super old shirt. This is the Beatles anthology shirt, and here on the back, it's a quite old shirt. I wear it to sleep, and it says something: you haven't seen everything until you've seen it on Laserdisc. And way back in the day, in the mid-90s, if you ever get a chance to get that box set, and I'm sure it's in DVD, that's just a tremendous story of the Beatles, a lot of it in their own words, and you can feel right away how they have the common touch, and after you listen to them for 5 or 6 minutes, you feel like you know them and they're your friend. It's no wonder some people went crazy, and because they're just they're that sympathetic. So here they are, Now and Then. Beatles is set to drop final single remixed from 1978, Lennon Song. And I know every time you bring up the Beatles these days on the net, people say the Rolling Stones are better, or, the Beatles are for the young people. And I should have got some water. My voice is going away. Or people say that the Beatles are for kids, and then you grow up and listen to the Stones. But I don't think you can really compare those two. They're too different. And I think really, and I'm not a super Beatles fan, but I would say that there's no other group or even composer that has the depth and the breadth and the variety of top pop level songs that they had, one after another in all of those albums. And so many albums that work as a discrete thing, defining the creation of an album as a discrete art form as opposed to just a collection of songs. I'm not sure how. You may be a little tired of the Beatles, and I don't listen to them all the time, but I think you have to recognize just the scope of what they created. And you can see a lot of that even afterwards, after they broke up, many gems in their solo work. And my favorite Beatle is George. There's a great documentary that came out a few years ago about him. Fascinating story. And again, that's all got the guy's so empathetic. And anyway, let's move on. Something about a movie. We went across that yesterday, and poison specialist accused of fatally poisoning wife. I always mention this. This is the idea of irony. News is irony. Like the anti-corruption politician is caught taking a bribe. This is something that's always very, someone's trying to call me now, I'm distracted. This is something, the idea of irony is how they pick out news. Because if we look at the stories, usually it's not anybody that's important or really newsworthy, but what makes it newsworthy and what people like about it, it has a human interest and people want to click on it, is that irony. It's one thing, and like, oh, isn't that funny? Poison specialist accused of fatally poisoning wife. I want to click on that. Russia simulates nuke strike. AI deepfakes making war in Ukraine even more chaotic and confusing. There's Ukraine back. It's very a difficult situation there with Russia on its back foot, and we have both Russia and China coming on strong. I don't know what to say about that. From the first days of the war, I just kind of felt like, well, hope we don't get involved with it, and I hope we don't get nuked. Cubans migrating to the U.S. over the past 2 years. Next phase in New York City, I guess housing crisis, passing out tents. These U.S. cities go through peaks and valleys with different administrations, more conservative, more liberal, and they have less crime, more crime. They get weaker on crime, they get tougher on crime, they have more homeless people, less homeless people. There is a sort of toing and froing kind of wave effect back and forth. I used to live in Los Angeles, and I lived in a sort of time of paradise, and then you go back 10 years later and it's all changed. This is the ebb and flow of politics in the big city. Hard to ever say you're really making progress. It just seems to be the state these big cities are in. So this is the news today. Some sad news up there in Maine. It'd be easy enough to talk about all the details and have the pictures of the people crying as they're leaving the venue, but we've seen it all before. It's quite tragic. So anyway, I think that's all the news for today. And let me show you. Well, I don't know. I feel a little down starting and ending with this story. So let's talk about the news again tomorrow. Hopefully it'll be some better news, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.